Hi everyone, welcome to Experience Kills. I'm Richard, I'm here with Ben.
Hello!
What are we going to talk about today, Ben?
I don't know, Richard, what are we going to talk about today on another exciting episode of Experience Kills?
Well, I'll tell you then. We're going to talk about Undead Horde, which is a multi-platform RPG from 10 Ton. I'd not heard of these before, but you love their stuff apparently.
Absolutely adore it, yes. Big fan of Tesla vs. Lovecraft, Crimson Land, Judge, love them.
I've not touched any of these. I was going through their list and found one that I'd played on the Vita. What was that called? I've already forgotten it.
The Ball.
Oddball, King of Oddball or something like that. Yeah, so
yeah, not one I actually know, that one.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not familiar with their work, but I've been pleasantly surprised by Undead Horde. So, as I say, it's it's like an action RPG. You play a necromancer, and your task is to raise the dead and take out the living and enlist them to your cause. So it plays out across a pretty varied map. So you've got like frozen wastes with barbarians in it, green areas with knights, stuff like that. So it's all sort of Middle Ages sort of enemies. There's even chickens in there for you to kill and enlist into your army. And the idea is that you can find all these different enemy types, take them out, build up your own army and direct them to attack anything that's left alive. You've even got your own attacks, so you can cast spells. You've got melee attacks with swords, hammers, daggers, fairly varied range of weaponry with their own effects. And yeah, it's just some simple fun. How have you found it?
I've really enjoyed it. I mean, it's a departure from the 10 ton stuff I've played previously, which are more simplistic, top-down, twin-stick shooters. And while they've never pushed the boundaries that hard on them, they were always very well made, good art styles, lots of variety in weapons. And I think this game has really sort of taken that and expanded upon it. You know, obviously we've got loot now, we've got this unit control mechanic, and obviously a much more varied sort of narrative driven story. So that there's a lot more in this game, and it's a much more ambitious experience. Tell you what it reminded me of though, do you remember I did a review, I think it was about a year ago, for a game called Masters of Anima? Don't know if you remember
it now. I didn't play it.
No, that's fair enough. So that was a game in which you weren't a bad guy, you were a good guy, but the whole point was that you could animate sort of material in the environment to sort of fight for you, like golems and stuff like that. Okay. So it had that action RPG thing with the animation of inanimate objects in a similar way to this is like Raising the Dead. However, that game didn't have as much depth in the sort of loot system, in the leveling system that we have in this as well. There's quite a few layers to this. They're bringing the action RPG sort of staples, isn't it? On top of the fun of just having a zombie horde to fight for you. Personally, I'm a big fan of zombie bears.
Yes, yeah, zombie bears are pretty great. But yeah, there's all sorts of different stuff in there, and like you say, there's more layers to it than at first appear. So it does feel quite simplistic when you begin. It's one of those where it's all about damage per second, and it's a case of just simply holding the trigger down and watching your dude hit stuff. So there doesn't feel a lot to it in the beginning. But the depth is in what units you pick. So once you've been able to kill off a few people, and a few different character types, then they unlock in sort of your home base, and you can then build your army depending on how well leveled you are, with the units that you've got available. And that might be archers, it might be people with axes, it might be old women with a rolling pin at the very beginning. There's quite a good sense of fun in there. And the depth is in knowing what enemy types respond well to the stuff that you've got available. So maybe you want to go with ranged fire arrows or something like that for particularly tough enemies, just so that you don't get hammered in close quarters. And you have to think about that sort of stuff to really make it through. It's not a case of just brute forcing the thing. There is more depth to it than it first looks.
It's actually quite a hard game. I mean, this is something that is common amongst 10 tons games, that they have this very approachable style and gameplay, but then you realize quite quickly that it isn't just a case of throwing yourself against enemies. You do need to put a fair bit of thought into strategy, when to push, when to pull back, when to be summoning more thralls to, to work for you, when to be using direct attacks. Even though the controls and the gameplay are simple, there is quite a bit of sort of micromanaging required and real depth to the gameplay when you start to get into it, isn't there? Because otherwise you just get killed a lot. I died quite a lot.
I've died loads, but it's got that right balance as well, where if you are going to die repeatedly, at least it doesn't set you back too far. There's regular save points in this. It's laid out with fairly small maps that interlink, and within most of those sections there is a quick teleport area, so you can go between each area as you please, which means if you do die, if you find a particularly challenging bit, it's very easy to go back to your base and rethink your strategy with a new build in your army and just try different things out really quickly.
What I found myself doing was getting into fights with different, various hordes at my disposal, and getting them being depleted, and then retreating quickly to teleport back to my base, because you can just grab more units from your home base very easily, like you said. Yeah. However, if you die, I noticed all the enemies in that level respawn. Yes. So you kind of have to fight your way back through them if you do get killed. But it telegraphs your impending death quite heavily with the shield that gets activated when all your units are killed, and then you can kind of take at least a couple more hits after reaching 0 health before you die, so it gives you a real chance to retreat. And I noticed enemies don't really kite that for that long of a time. They don't follow you for a particularly long time, so you can get away from them and they will forget you, and then it gives you a bit of breathing room. So it's balanced really well, isn't it? It's like tuned for the most fun.
And you don't even have to go back to your base. You can just go to a different area of the map that you may have already cleared out. The bodies stay there, so if you want to go back and maybe you've lost a few units but you've just cleared out a village, just go back to that village, and then the corpses that you've left behind, there's your new army ready and waiting.
Yeah. It's super satisfying actually, isn't it, doing that? Yeah. Like, you thought you got me, here's another 100 dudes.
Yeah, it's good fun.
When you were leveling up, I was putting all my levels into whatever increased my unit cap, just because I had so much fun with throwing units around rather than building up like my own stats, like my health or my attack. I was like, no, it's all about units. I just want more dudes. So
I've balanced it out on mine because depending on what I'm doing, I might change my tactics. So there are sections where there are not a finite limit to the units that you've got to take out. They will keep respawning if there's like a base there. Right. There's maps with several bases, and you've got to take those bases down while the other units are on the map. So what I've taken to doing is making sure my own necromancer is powerful enough to take down the base while I'm directing my units to distract the army that's already out there.
I haven't played as much of this as you. Tell me if the unit command sort of system gets any more complicated, because from what I've experienced, it's just come to me or go that way.
Oh, yeah, that's as simple as it doesn't get any more complex than that.
I like that. It's so simple. I mean, that was something with Masters of Anima. It wasn't a lot more complicated, but it was complicated enough that it felt sometimes a bit difficult to juggle, direct combat as well as your units. Where with this, I was like, if I'm in trouble as my guy and I've got units, I just pull them back to me, or I'll have them attacking enemies while I take out the spawning buildings. Yeah. Just sort of like they're distracting the enemies. So it felt very intuitive, and yet really engaging and like really good fun. Did you ever play like Overlord back in the day on the 360 and stuff?
Oh yeah, there was a couple of those games, weren't there?
Yeah,
I did. I enjoyed those.
Yeah, there's not a lot of games in this sort of little subgenre, but I like playing as a bad guy. I like summoning the undead. It's fun to do, and I'm glad this game ticks those boxes as well as it does.
Yeah, and there's a bit of exploring to do as well. So you've got secrets in the map, like buttons on statues that open secret passageways, and there's treasure in the passageways. Stuff like that just keep it a bit more interesting than just another slog through some bad dudes to kill.
Is there a lot of variety to the loot? Because even quite early on, I was getting different loot drop with different rarities, different status effects, you know, all kinds of different buffs and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is pretty deep. You know, you could get really good drops and like really be able to like maximize your character's playstyle if you wanted to.
There is quite a lot to the inventory system in this, and not all of it great, because your capacity is really quite small considering the amount of stuff that you can pick up. So you've got all the different classes that you'd expect of like Destiny drops with like color-coded rarities for each of the different weapon types. You've got skulls that give you different buffs if you carry those. You've got rings that you can carry, books with different effects. So there's like 5 different categories of item that give you different buffs in addition to the 2 main weapons that you use, one on left trigger, one on right. So there's loads of stuff you can pick up. Each item feels randomly generated, and then within your home base you can eventually unlock a trader that sells each of the different categories of item, and then you can pay to upgrade those shops as well to give you rarer, better stuff.
Yes, I just started digging into that in my game as well, where I was like, oh, I can pay tribute to increase the likelihood of good stuff. I can upgrade them so I can get more options. I was like, wow, there's that sort of reminded me of Diablo, actually. That reminded me of the Diablo 3 merchant system. And I was like, wow, there really is a lot of stuff in this game. A lot more than you think when you first start playing it.
Yeah, but it still doesn't ever feel overwhelming. It always feels manageable. The missions themselves are simple enough to follow, and you just get a list at the top of the screen that's unobtrusive that just says you might be level 9. It'll say, right, you've got a level 8 mission to do in this area, and it's, you know, it just keeps it really simple. Everything's well managed. The only downside for me is just the inventory system, which is a bit clumsy. It's too small, and when you're trying to assign stuff to their particular slots, it's much more difficult than it needs to be. You've actually got to select from your inventory what you want to use and move it to the one slot that it works in. Now, I don't know why it does that when there is only one slot it can go to.
Yeah, that confused me. I thought, am I missing something here? Is there a double click option or something? But no, you have to manually move it, from what I can tell as well. I did think that was a bit of an odd choice. I couldn't work that one out, why that was the way that was.
Yeah, so that feels clumsy, and just the way stuff is stored, there's no way to sequence it. It just becomes a bit of a mess in your inbox sort of thing, and there's nowhere else to store stuff outside of your character. There's no sort of crate in your home base where you can keep hold of stuff that you might want to come back to later. So it's a little bit
to my knowledge, this is the first time these guys have done anything with an inventory system like this. Previous games have all been about, you know, you pick your loadout prior to going into a level. And there wasn't loot like this. You unlocked stuff as you progressed. Right. So this is their first foray into an action RPG loot system, and you can kind of tell that.
You can tell, not to be cruel about it, but it does look like a first try. There's clearly stuff that they could do better with that, but I couldn't think of many other downsides to it, frankly. It's a really good fun game. I've played more of it than I intended to, for the purposes of talking about it today. I will go back and play more of it. I'm enjoying it that much.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I always find myself really hooked into 10 Tons games. Like they find a core sort of cycle of gameplay that just is really satisfying. Just balance that challenge and accessibility just enough where you feel like, oh, I could just clear this map. I could just do a couple more levels, you know. And it never feels like, you know, it's going to be that much of a time commitment, but you always feel satisfied when you finish with it. Just really cool. I'm excited to see where these guys go next, because they're clearly branching out, trying new things, pushing their kind of formula forwards, and experimenting in different genres. So I'm pretty hyped to see what they do next. Really cool game.
Yeah, so try it out if you... Is it out now? It's out now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
I think it's like 14 quid or something on Xbox, which is where we've played it. It's also available on Steam, Switch, and PS4.
So every option under the sun, basically, then.
Yeah, so have a look at that. It is worth your time. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll speak to you next time about something else. More games.
The way you said that about something else, the price of bananas has gone up again.
Well, it might be. The amount of stuff you put on the feed.
So yes, you can find us at Experience Kills. Where can they find you, Richard?
I'm at Colonel Red on Twitter.
And I'm at DIYE. Like and subscribe, please, to this channel and to the video. We really appreciate that, and it super helps with getting word out about us. Yeah, we don't have a Patreon and no adverts on any of the YouTube stuff, so you know we do try to keep it as free and easy as possible. So just a like and a subscribe, and by all means subscribe to the audio versions of these as well if you don't have time to watch what I'm sure is a lovely video that Richard has put together.
Right, thanks everyone. Bye.
Cheers guys, bye bye.